All right, let's talk about something that can cause a ton of stress for any business owner: getting a corporation tax penalty from HMRC. This is a complete guide on how to appeal one for the 2025-26 tax year, and we've developed it with the absolute experts over at ProTax Accountant.
You know that feeling, right? That thud of a brown envelope on the doormat. You see that HMRC logo in the corner and your stomach just drops. If you're running a business in London, that one letter can completely derail your entire day.
You finally rip it open, and there it is, a penalty notice. Maybe it's for £100, maybe 500, or maybe it's a gut punch of £1,200 or even more. Your first instinct might be to just pay it and make it go away. But hold on.
The most important thing to do right now is not to panic. Take a breath. You have rights, and you definitely have options. We're here to walk you through everything, step by step, so you can go from feeling that dread to feeling back in control.
And like we said, all this guidance comes straight from the team at ProTax Accountant. These guys deal with HMRC appeals day in and day out, so you're getting advice from people who are truly in the trenches.
So, here's our game plan. First, we're going to decode that penalty notice. Then, we'll dive into the absolute heart of any appeal, the concept of a reasonable excuse. After that, we'll cover building a rock-solid case with evidence, how to actually submit it, what happens next, and finally, when it's probably a good idea to call in the pros. Okay, let's dive right in. The very first step is to get to grips with that penalty notice. Don't just glance at the amount owed. You need to understand exactly why HMRC has fined you in the first place.
So, penalties usually fall into a few main buckets. The most common is late filing. That starts at 100 quid and goes up fast. But the inaccuracy penalties? Whoa, those can really sting, sometimes costing you up to 100% of the tax you underpaid. Then you've got penalties for paying late, having messy records, or not even telling HMRC your company should be paying tax. Knowing which one you're dealing with is absolutely crucial.
Seriously, that piece of paper is your starting point for everything. It tells you why you got the penalty, how they calculated it, and the most critical part, the deadline for challenging it. You need to read every single word.
And this number is the one that really matters right now. You typically have just 30 days from the date on that notice to get your appeal in. Here's a pro tip. The moment you open that letter, get a pen and circle that date on your calendar. If you miss this deadline, you could lose your right to appeal altogether. The clock is officially ticking.
Okay, now we're getting to the absolute core of any successful appeal. It all hinges on proving you have what HMRC calls a reasonable excuse. And no, this isn't just any old excuse. It's a very specific legal idea, and you've got to understand it.
So what on earth does that actually mean? Well, in HMRC's world, a reasonable excuse is something genuinely unexpected, something totally out of your control that made it impossible for you to do your taxes on time, even though you were trying to be responsible. We're talking about major unforeseen events, not just being swamped at work.
This quote comes from a really important legal case, and it shows you the test that HMRC uses. They basically ask themselves, what would a responsible, on-the-ball business owner have done in this exact same situation? It's not about what you thought was reasonable, it's about what an impartial outsider would think. Now, this is so important to get your head around. On one side, you've got excuses HMRC is likely to accept, things like a sudden, severe illness, the death of a partner, or even their own website crashing. But on the other side are the excuses that almost never fly. Saying you didn't have the money to pay, HMRC expects you to plan for that. That's not all. Here's where most people go wrong. You can't just blame your accountant. It only works if you can prove you did everything right in hiring them and giving them your information. Look, claiming you have a reasonable excuse is one thing. Proving it is the entire ballgame. An appeal without evidence is just a story, and HMRC needs more than that. You can't just tell them what happened. You have to show them.
So what does good evidence actually look like? If you were seriously ill, you need a doctor's note for that specific period. If the HMRC website went down, you need a dated screenshot showing the error message. You know what? A great tip is to create a simple timeline of events, matching each point to a piece of evidence. It just makes your case super clear and easy for HMRC to follow.
Now, I want to share a real-world mistake to avoid because it perfectly shows why your evidence has to be about your specific case and nothing else.
This case was heard at the first-tier tribunal. You can think of this place as an independent referee in the world of tax disputes. It's completely separate from HMRC. So in this case, a company basically argued, hey,
Our sister company got their penalty canceled for the same thing, so you have to cancel ours too. The tribunal threw that argument right out. They said what happened to another company is totally irrelevant. The takeaway here is crystal clear. Your appeal has to stand on its own 2 feet, with its own solid proof.
Okay, so you've got your head around the penalty, you know what your reasonable excuse is, and you've gathered all your evidence. Now for the practical part, actually submitting the appeal.
It really just breaks down into 4 simple steps. 1. Pick your method. Doing it online is usually the quickest. 2. Write a clear, factual explanation of what happened. Use that timeline you made. 3. And this is non-negotiable. Make sure you include your penalty reference number and your UTR. And 4. Attach clear copies of all your evidence.
Here is a golden rule from the team at ProTax Accountant. Always, always keep a paper trail. If you appeal online, save a PDF of the final confirmation screen. If you post a letter, spend the extra few quid to send it with tracking. Trust me, if there's ever a dispute later, that proof of submission is your best friend.
So, you've hit send on your appeal. Now what? Well, this is where the waiting game starts, but it's important to know what the process looks like and what your options are if the decision doesn't go your way. And stay with me, the next point might surprise you. Here's the typical flow. After you submit, your appeal goes into a queue at HMRC, and this can take several weeks, sometimes even longer. They might get in touch to ask for more information. If they do, get back to them as fast as you can. Eventually, you'll get another one of those brown envelopes with their final decision inside.
This is the question nobody wants to think about, but you have to be ready for it. If that letter arrives and HMRC has said no, it is not the end of the road. You still have 2 powerful options.
Your first option is to ask for an internal review. This is where you say, okay, I want a different, impartial officer at HMRC to look at my case with a fresh pair of eyes. Your second, more formal option is to take your case to that independent tax tribunal we talked about earlier. They'll listen to both your side and HMRC's side before making a final, legally binding decision.
Now, while you can absolutely navigate this whole process yourself, there are definitely times when calling in a professional is the smartest move you can make, especially if the penalty is big or your case feels a bit complicated.
This is where a tax pro can be a game changer. I mean, they live and breathe this stuff. They know exactly what HMRC considers reasonable. They know how to package your evidence for the biggest impact, and they can handle all the stressful calls and letters, freeing you up to actually run your business. And the official way you do this is by filling out a simple form called a 64-8. This form basically tells HMRC, from now on, please talk to my accountant about this, not me. Once that's filed, all communication goes directly to your representative.
So if you're feeling a bit out of your depth or you just want the peace of mind of having an expert in your corner, getting that help is pretty straightforward. You can get in touch with the team at ProTax Accountant directly. You can call or WhatsApp them on 07985 689912, or just drop an email to info@protaxaccountant.co.uk. And for a really detailed written breakdown, check out the in-depth article on their blog.
Okay, and now for a very important point. The information we've shared here is for general guidance. Every single tax case is unique, so this should never be a substitute for getting professional advice that's tailored to your exact situation.
Let me be crystal clear about this. Before you make any final decisions about your appeal or your business finances, it is absolutely essential that you consult with a qualified tax expert, like the team at ProTax Accountant, who can advise you based on the specific details of your case. If you found this guide helpful, do us a quick favor and hit that subscribe button. We're always putting out new content to make complex tax issues simple and actionable.
And I'll leave you with this one last question to think about. Now that you understand the process, what is that single most important piece of evidence you need to go and find right now to start building your credible, successful appeal? Thanks for watching.